Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We're so glad you're here. We're very pleased this evening to have Salmagundi Club member Janet A. Cook with us this evening, who will be speaking about her journey as an artist and teacher. We are also very happy to welcome some of Janet's students who will be joining us this evening. Janet is a teacher at the Art Students League and the Pastel Society. In addition, we're very pleased to include our out-of-state members in our virtual Zoom events. To make tonight a successful evening, we have everyone's cameras on and you have your vocals enabled, but it's really important to turn your mics off when you're not talking so we don't have background noise. Before we begin our presentation with Janet A. Cook this evening, Lucas will be giving us a few words regarding the nominating committee. Lucas, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here for Janet Cook. I just wanted to say that we're currently recruiting members for the club's committees. And if you're interested in getting involved, please contact the office and they will put you in touch. So yeah, it would be very nice to have some of you join the committees in Salmagundi Club.
And could you just briefly name the committees, please?
Yeah, so let me make sure that I include all of them. There's the admissions, art, curator, program, finance, house, library, PR, the COGAP, so the COGAP, and the junior scholarship, which is what I'm part of.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
Now, if someone is interested in joining any of those committees, who do they contact? How do they do it? Do they call? Do they email? What do they do?
So I would recommend to email Salmagundi Club's committee email, which is scny.nominating.committee@gmail.com.
Thank you. And Lucas, would you be so kind to write that in the chat, please?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'll go ahead and do that. Thank you so much, Bonnie.
Great, thank you. So Janet Tava, please, can you tell us what we're going to be hearing about this evening with Janet A. Cook?
Sure. First of all, good evening. Thank you. This is a series called Behind the Scenes. It's sponsored by the Junior Scholarship Committee, and you'll meet two of my great juniors. They'll be hosting it. Tonight's program is on Janet A. Cook. She's an amazing painter, just amazing. And her journey came about from finance, I believe, to graphics, to fine artists. It's really a very unusual story because here's a woman who's morphed into this incredible career. Please stay tuned, pay attention, and look at these paintings. Enjoy. Bonnie?
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Janet, please. Janet A. Cook. I just want to mention something that's very interesting to me, at least, about Janet A. Cook is, believe it or not, there's another artist in the world, not in our Salmagundi world, but in the world with the name of Janet Cook. So because of that, it's really important to include her middle initial when speaking about her or when promoting her.
Thank you,
so Janet A. Cook is a very interesting person and artist, and we're happy to have her here this evening with us. Her journey is began of that of a young woman from another country who decided to come to this country with a job. And then she said, you know, I really want to be an artist. And she's going to talk about that and what it was like to come to a different country and what it was like to say, I really want to be an artist and how that happened. So Janet, please take it away.
Hello. I want to thank you, Bonnie. Thank you, the committee, for inviting me to talk. I am very nervous. I don't do this lightly. It was quite a long journey, and I've sort of flip-flopped between financial, IT, computers, back to art a couple of times. But this last time, I've sort of made it work for me. I think, Charity, you're going to ask me questions about this?
Yes,
or shall
I
wrap it
will.
on.
Did you want to show the short little presentation, or are you going to
Yes.
leave that for the end? It's up to you.
I'll start with the presentation.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll go through these, and if you have any questions, let me know. And I've put the sizes on all the images. This is a picture of my Midtown studio. As you can see, it's very messy, and it's full of stuff over the years I've collected and produced. There's one thing about being an artist, you just continue to produce stuff.
And Janet, do you want to share with us the material that a lot of these are painted on? It's a very interesting material.
Yeah, I use wooden panels, but I also use aluminum panels as well. They're made by ePanel and Dibond primarily, and then the wooden ones are made by a company called Barrett's, and they're based in Brooklyn.
Hello.
They're pretty much all painted in oil. I don't use acrylic. And this is a diptych. This is an actual study for this particular painting, but I turned her upside down. So if you want me to go through and I can talk about the individual images, if you like.
We can certainly do that. Or is this about this is the end of the slideshow, right, Jen?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So maybe we'll have you talk a little bit about your path, and then I think it would be great at some point to come back and look at these a little more in depth, because I think everyone wants to take a closer look at them.
Okay.
So maybe you can start. We've gotten kind of an overview of your life, but maybe you can give us a little bit more with the specifics, and then we'll dive into some of the questions that we have lined up.
Right. Well, when I was a kid, I was about 11, and I decided I wanted to be an artist, and I started drawing. And the main reason I started drawing is because my neighbors had moved. There was a group, a family of 5 children and 2 parents, and they moved away from our next door to another part of town. So I left to my own devices. I decided I would pick up drawing and painting and see whether I was any good at it, and it would kill the time. And I found that I was moderately okay, and it just took patience to do. So it sort of it built my confidence. And then one day I took a little drawing, a painting into class, and my teacher said, "Well, you didn't do that." So I thought, well, that's a good sign. They also said it about my needlework as well. So that I sort of had early inclinations. My dad always encouraged me to draw as well. He used to do the tiny little cartoons and scribbles on things, and he always said, "Oh, I wish I could draw." So I sort of took that as my goal, to please him and to please myself, I guess. After school, that's high school, I actually went to work in a graphic design studio, but I didn't really have the skills, and I really needed more education, so I left. And I got a position at a local college just outside London. But when I went to my family and said I wanted to do this, they were like, "Nope, nope, go and get a real job." So I went off to Kingston Sutton Council, which is like the city council, and they were looking for young people to start working in computers. So I have no experience, didn't even know what a computer was. I went in and I had the interview and they said, okay, we'll hire you. And the rest is kind of history. So I spent about 4 years doing computer IT stuff. And then I got a position at the University in Leicester. It was called Leicester Poly then, now it's called Montford University. And I took art history for 3 years and got a degree. And then my then boyfriend at the time said, well, why don't you go back into computers while you're trying to find something to do with the art? So I signed up for a business called Security Pacific, which I think is a West Coast bank. So there was a West Coast bank in London. So I went to work there for a few more years. And then those skills that I acquired, I managed to bring them to America because it was a time of database expansion. And it was a new technology and it paid quite well. And I said to my then boyfriend husband, who'd got a transfer to New York, if I can get a job, I will come. So I did. I got 3 job offers and I came. So that's how I ended up in New York. And I ended up with something called a J visa, which is it's a training visa. So a lot of medical people come over on it. And the idea is that you learn your skill and then you take it back home again. You don't stay. But after a year and a half, my visa ran out and my husband got transferred to LA. And so I moved out there and then I had pretty much 3 or 4, maybe longer, 5 years where I couldn't work because I didn't have a visa. So I started taking art classes again. And that was when it started. That was probably around 1992. And I continued to take classes into about 2007. I thought I was just going to be a perpetual student forever. And then I sort of, to answer one of your questions, I kind of went back again because I felt I hadn't had an income or I sort of lost my independence. And as you say, you sort of define yourself with the way you do what you do. And the studying, I felt I needed more of it. So I continued to take classes. And finally, I decided, as I say, in 2007, I would stop taking classes. But in 1995, I discovered websites, and that's how I decided to make some money. So I started doing websites and I continued doing art classes at the same time. And it was a lot easier this time to establish myself as an artist because I had a lot more training and I had a lot more determination to make it work, I think. But the websites brought in a reasonably good income, but slowly the income from the art went up and the income from the websites went down. And so here I am.
Oh, that's incredible. There's a lot of transitions throughout that path.
Yeah.
What would you say was either the hardest moment in that transition or the hardest moments?
I think just believing in yourself, because after I left in 2007, I didn't get a gallery for about another couple of years, but it took me that long to produce work that I felt was singular to me. I think the hardest part was just believing in myself that I was going to be able to do it and that I was going to produce the work that was going to be saleable at some stage in the future. I had no idea who or what or where or when or anything, and that's how I met Lee, and he was my first gallery at Dacia Gallery. So I think just sort of believing in yourself is the hardest thing.
You touched on a little bit, kind of the sense of identity and that maybe at one point you went back to the more or less day job to kind of reclaim that. Can you talk a little more about that? I think that's really interesting.
Well, because of my status of not being able to work, I sort of lost financial independence, and I'd always worked. I mean, I had a Saturday job when I was about 14. So there have been quite a few years where I had worked, and then all of a sudden I was like without an income. My husband was very supportive. He just thought I was being nuts. But I was also excited about the technology, and it's a good combination of art and technology mixed together in websites. You have to know a little bit of each, and I found that really rewarding. Does that answer your question?
Yes. What was the point where you kind of felt like you had finally made it as an artist?
Now,
Now.
being interviewed by you. Seriously, I don't think, well, I don't know, maybe some artists do feel they've made it, but honestly don't feel, and everything helps. So if you win a little prize here and a big prize there, and then, you know, something else positive happens, you get a teaching opportunity. It's an accumulation of things, events happening that I think finally get you to be made it status, but I don't feel I'm there yet.
Where do you find most of your patrons for your art? Is it through your galleries? Is it through teaching?
It's a bit of both, friends, neighbours, teaching, students. I've had a couple of students that commissioned me to do things. One was a self-portrait. I have a neighbour who's commissioned me to do a little portrait of her friend. From different places, even from not so much from commissions, but sales online through Instagram and Facebook. So, but generally people I know, it's word of mouth more than advertising.
And the Instagram sales, does that tend to be people that you already have a connection with? Or is that often people you've never met before who
the
find your
latter.
work?
Yeah. I was quite surprised because I personally like to see things and touch things and see it in person. But I think now the internet, with such amazing quality of resolution, that you can see pretty much an accurate portrayal of the actual image. So I think it's encouraged people to spend more and to look to buy rather than actually going to see something in a gallery now.
Where is the farthest in the world that you have sent an artwork?
Israel, I think.
Wow.
And it went with the person that owned it, and it's still there now with her mother.
Do you handle your own shipping?
Generally, yes. Yeah. So if I sell something, I will probably FedEx it, and generally the person who's buying it usually pays for it. It depends. A lot of people who've commissioned me locally, they just come and pick it up. So it's not so much of an issue. But if it's like a small drawing or something like that, I usually have the patron pay.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to be found by your galleries, or how you found the galleries?
A friend of mine, Daniel Mayman, he was in an opening at Dacia and invited me to the opening, and he said that Lee's looking for new people. So I would advise anyone who's interested in finding a gallery, find a gallery that's just opened or just getting established, because that way you can grow together. So he invited me and I gave him my card, and then he said, send me some pictures. And he said, okay, we'll think about it. And then he had a competition and he said, submit some stuff for the competition. So I did. And he said, well, you've won first prize, and that is the solo show. So that was in 2012. And I've had four solo shows since. So that's how it happened. It was just the right time, right place, right people. But I think it's good to know that, because you really need to go to openings and meet people and speak to the gallery owners and find out what their submission policies are. Just get feedback from them so that you can connect with them in the future if you're looking for a gallery.
And what about Haven Gallery? Was that a similar process?
A little bit. She was managing, her name's Erica, and she managed the gallery on 38th Street between 9th and 10th Avenue, no, 8th and 9th Avenue. And it was a fairly new gallery. It's called Booth Gallery. And the other one, which was kind of in it, was Last Rites. So they're all a little bit dark and mysterious, the work that was being shown there. And she had come from Forum, and she was managing it for them. Not Forum, but she had come from Forum to work in those galleries. And then she decided she was going to set up her own gallery out on Long Island in a place called Northport. So I'd had a relationship with her. We got talking about the paintings and then our cats and then just general stuff. So I'd go in and see the shows every now and again. And then one day she wasn't there. And then I saw that she had opened a gallery out in Long Island, which is not as convenient as just around the corner where she was. So I drove out there just to sort of take a look at the work and sort of finally edged up to the question, would you like to see my work? Because their work is a little more fanciful, I think, more imaginative than I do. I mean, I do imaginative stuff, but it's different. I think there's a little more narrative in it. So she said she really liked my work, and then she's shown and sold a few of my paintings since. So, and then she does develop shows that are particularly theme orientated, like the last one was Shakespeare. And yeah, I did Lady Macbeth for the show.
Wow.
So, but in each of the shows that I've been involved in, I've usually been commissioned to create, not commissioned, but the directive was to create an original piece of work for the show.
How much lead time do you usually have when there's a show done that way?
With her, quite a long time, sometimes 6 months. One time it got cancelled and postponed, so it was actually a year. So plenty of time.
Yeah. What do you think is the hardest non-art aspect of being an artist? Is it contracts? Is it marketing yourself? Record keeping?
Yeah, all of that.
All of it.
Yeah. And I'm pretty bad at it as well. Yeah, I can't give you much advice on that except do it. It's a painful part of it, but you got to do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Especially record keeping.
Yeah, and if you can't do it, get someone to help you do it.
Mm-hmm.
That will make your life a little bit easier. Even if you have to pay for it, it still makes more sense, and that frees you up to do what you are good at and enjoy.
Can you talk a little more about doing commissions?
I'm probably not the best person to ask. I've only done a few, but generally it's somebody I know, or it's been referred to from a friend of a friend. And I usually have a contract that stipulates that they will pay 50% upfront. I'll do little sketches for them and studies, and then 50% after it's completed. And I do allow one revision because things obviously, people change their minds. So which I sort of gauge between 6 and 10 hours extra work. And then after that, I charge by the hour, depending on how large or expensive or cheap and small the painting or the work is. And I haven't really had any problems. And I base that on how I used to manage my website design business as well. That's I'd always get half up front to commit all that way.
Mm-hmm. So that's probably helped you in a sense then, having that kind of background.
Yeah, well, yeah. It always amazes me that people were so happy to pay for a website, but give them a painting at the same price and like, oh no.
Do you send out a regular newsletter, or do you have some other way of keeping in touch with your collectors?
I'm not very good at them sending out the newsletter, but I have done in the past. No, I don't, but I think I should.
I think at this point, we're getting a lot of questions in the chat, which is really great. I think I'm going to turn over to Stella to start asking some of those questions.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So yes, we do have a lot of questions, and I'm gonna go down one by one.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna start with Janitova's question. How did your finance IT career impact your fine art career? Did you find the structure of the finance world help you meet deadlines for commissions? Well, not really.
No.
Okay, fair enough.
No, say it again.
No, just like from what the experiences that you gain from the IT world, has that impacted how you treat your fine art career? Like in terms of, like, for instance, how you meet the deadlines and how you handle commissions, or not really?
Only for like the certain, to a certain extent with the commissions, yeah. And it's given me an outline of how to go about it and not feel bad for asking more, and not and trying to lay down lines of where I'm willing to bend and where I'm not willing to bend. So it definitely helped, yeah.
Okay, and we actually have a follow-up question about that, which is that when it comes to commission work from friends versus strangers, do you find yourself kind of like, giving them different price points, or how do you handle that?
I try to be consistent throughout the process. So whether they're a stranger or whether they're a friend, I just try to figure out what I feel was a reasonable amount to ask.
Okay, so it's more about the work itself versus, oh, this is my friend, so I'm gonna give him or her a discount.
No, and I think it's important to be consistent, as I say, because if you do one price for one person and then somebody else comes along and says, well, you said that you gave her this price, then you get inconsistencies, and then I think that's a pretty bad thing to happen. So I try to be consistent.
Makes sense, yeah. So we actually have a multi-part questions from multiple people. And it's basically regarding the presentation that you just gave. They love your work. And so would it be possible for you to show the presentation again and really talk about like, how do you go about choosing your subject matter? What are your influences? And who did you study with?
A long list of people. I'll start off with that one. Sharon Sprung, who I've been was subbing for 19 months at the Art Students League. Mary Beth McKenzie, Peter Cox, Stephen Assell, somebody called Bob Greer-Brack, but he's no longer with us. I would say that they're the main influences.
Are they still teaching there or no?
Peter sadly passed away probably a year and a half ago, maybe a bit longer now. And Stephen Assell teaches at the SVA. Sharon and Mary Beth both teach at the Art Students League.
Got it. And can you just walk us through your presentation again and really talk about your influences and how you choose your subject matter?
I had to, for a long, my first model left, she's recommended her friend to come model for me. So that's how I chose this particular person. And I wanted to try and keep all of it kind of abstract and loose, except for the face. And she was a beautiful model, and I sort of exaggerated her hair flying around. Sometimes I don't really have a particular theme in mind. I just kind of want to have a little bit of abstraction or decoration or a sort of fun element to it. But this was like a second version of another one I did, which was called Wilderness. This is Wilderness 2, which was a woman sitting or standing with the mesas that you see in Utah and Arizona in the background. And she sort of looked a little bit Indian, native Indian to me. So this one sort of grew out of that one.
Okay.
This is on aluminum, by the way. And it's
you paint on aluminum.
Yeah, there's a company called Dibond and another one, E-Panel. And you don't need to gesso it or scratch it up or anything because it's designed to be painted on. So you just work directly onto the surface.
Cool.
And Janet, have you always worked in larger sizes, or did you kind of start smaller, especially with the aluminum panels, and then work up?
I did start a little bit smaller, yeah, like 12 by 12 to begin with as an experiment. And then because it's so much lighter than a piece of wood or not a canvas particularly, but it's more stable than a canvas. And I don't like the give that you get from a canvas, or particularly linen, like on a wet day, the linen will stretch. So you have a lot of give, which some people like, but I detest. So I like flat panels that don't wobble.
Got it. It's really beautiful.
Thank you. This was based on me going to Italy and going to House of Borghese, Villa Borghese in Rome. And there's a woman and is being clutched at by Pluto, and she's in this pose at the top. And it's Persephone, and she's been dragged down to the underworld, having consumed, I think, some persimmons or plum, like, no, what is it? Anyway, some kind of fruit. So,
Right.
there's a deal being made between her mother and Pluto that she will come back for 6 months of the year. So this is her descending into the underworld. So I did it in like 3 stages. It's not actually 3 people. It's like the first, that's where she's falling, and then the second, and then the third at the bottom.
That's so interesting. You know, we have one question from Elizabeth, which is, what is your opinion on the popularity of fantasy art at present? Because we definitely see a fantasy element to your paintings.
Yeah, I didn't really have any influence personally. It's just I'd always wanted to use my imagination. I was always told off by my teachers to like stick it back in the box and put a lid on it. But once I left, it was like I was free to do anything, and if it worked, it worked. It didn't, it didn't. But I think it's interesting that it's a growing genre, and it's certainly, I think it will be recognized. And I think it's probably, if you're thinking about investing in it, it's probably a good time to invest, right? It's still just blossoming, but it's nice to see.
It's very interesting. You know, just one follow-up question to that. Do you also see for the commission works that people are commissioning you to do more fantasy art, or it really depends?
No, it's portraits.
Portraits, okay.
Yeah. Although there is actually one I did that did have somewhat of a fantasy background to it, and so it had like a thunder and lightning on the left-hand side, and then as it went across the page, across the panel to the right, there was clouds, storm clouds, and then eventually the storm clouds parted, and there was Mont Saint-Michel, which is based in France, and then it would be sunshine, and everything was sort of gay and happy, not in.
Was this a portrait as well, or?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Now that's interesting.
So yes, I did have one that was fantasy.
Okay, got it.
Going back to this one, these flowers around the edge are actually a stencil I made. They're quite large, and I saw a show where there was similar sort of shapes, and I really liked the shapes. So I made my own stencils and used it on this particular painting.
Got it.
Janet, what years were these paintings made? Are these kind of over a range of years, or are these more your recent works?
Since 2012.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Last 10 years.
Yeah, last 10 years. This one's about 4 years old, perhaps. This is quite a small panel, and it's 12 by 12, which is small for me. And it's a dancer who I've worked with for a long time. She's really beautiful, and she wears these amazing costumes. And I went to see her dance one time, and she was dancing as a phoenix. And that's where this particular color scheme came from. So she posed for me, but she was actually upside down. So I was looking down on her the other way around. But I decided to flip it. I think it has more presence, looking down upon her rather than the other way around. And I used a lot of palette knife and oil paint to get this effect over here and around here.
I love it. I just have a question about this. How do you usually go about approaching, let's say, someone who inspires you, like this dancer? Like, do you literally just walk up to her and say, hey, would you like to pose for me? Like, how do you go about doing that?
No, actually, she was recommended by Daniel Maben again, because I was looking for a woman to paint. I had a commission to paint a mermaid, and my last model had left. I think she left the country. So he said, we'll get in contact with this lady. And so she arrived with her tail in tow.
That's interesting. Cool.
Do you work mostly just from life, Janet, or do you work also from photographic references?
I prefer to work from life, but sometimes it's not possible, and recently it's been impossible. So
Exactly.
yeah, so no, I haven't really painted very much from life. And I think it's probably going to have a big effect on a lot of artists when we finally go back to being, you know, in a classroom dealing with 3D again.
Yeah, definitely.
My favorite is to work from life. But having said that, this was actually done from a photograph. And it's a combination of two people. It's one person's hands and body and another one for the face. And the reason I did that is because there wasn't not a lot of light on her face. So I decided to take another model that I've worked with and use her face and use the other woman's body. This is on aluminum. I can't move this thing out of the way, unfortunately. Oh, yes, I can.
All right.
I can. The computer expert here.
That's fine. We have a question, which is, do you always photograph your models?
Not always, no. But if I'm, particularly for drapery, something like that, then I'll definitely take pictures of that, because I don't really want, there's no point in the model just sitting there.
For
So
hours.
yeah, you may as well just take a photograph.
Got it. And
I'm not
go ahead.
against using photographs. I'm against them sometimes because they bend things and distort things, and you're not really aware of how much is being distorted.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I think it's a dangerous kind of avenue to go down. It's better if you've got some drawing experience or painting experience of actually painting people, because you will not notice it if you're working from a photograph, if you only work from photographs. And I see errors people make, and sometimes it's very obvious that they've used the photograph.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I noticed that there are many different painting techniques that you use, you know, just by looking at the 3-4 artworks you've shown us so far. Like, can you speak, especially to the younger artists, you know, a little bit more about like how it takes a lot of years and practice to perfect a style, and how do you go about, like, you know, like, I hate to use the word, like, quickening the process.
I wish there was a quick process. There isn't.
Okay. Good to know.
Do you want the bad news or the really bad news?
You know, we like the facts, just lay it out.
There's an artist called Robert Kondo, and this is one version. He says paint 6 hours a day, 6 days a week for 6 years.
Okay.
The other one is paint at least 4 to 10 hours each day, probably. And that within that 10 hours, that could be like marketing, bookkeeping, painting, and keep doing that for 4 years. And I personally, I have to say that when I started painting 6 hours a day, it made a big difference.
How long did you do that for? Like, how many years?
At least 7.
Wow.
I mean, that's the beauty of living in Manhattan, where there's places where you can study every day, and it gives you a good set of resilient skills because you often go in and you don't want to do it and you don't feel like it, but just showing up and putting the paint on the paper or on the canvas it's kind of one step in front of the other. It leads you to not question so much why you would be doing it, or wait for inspiration, because inspiration just isn't going to come.
Right. Well, now it's definitely on the record now, so I'm glad everyone's hearing this.
Yeah, and I wish I'd known when I started as well, because every year I used to think, oh, next year.
Right.
But you know, you really have to work at it.
Cool.
Did you want to ask about the different techniques?
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, please.
Well, on her face and her actual figure, I've used a fairly sort of smooth brush, like a bristle brush, not a bristle brush, rather, a sable or a synthetic, which is quite fine. And I tend to put many layers on top of each other as well. And I think that gives it a patina that you can't get until you waited for the paint to dry and you put more and more layers on top. For the background, I used palette knife over the first layer of paint. And I think for her hair, it's probably 2 or 3 layers there.
Got it.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I'm just gonna give a shout out to Karen. She actually owns a painting of yours from one of the auctions.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Thank
she
you,
put
Karen.
it in the chat box. Just so that we all know.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Yeah.
Janet, do you find the colors are more vibrant when you're painting on the aluminum panel than they might be on canvas? Or is it hard to tell?
No, I think they definitely are. Yeah.
They look extremely vibrant.
Yeah, they are. I think because it depends how you treat your canvas. If you're working on acrylic gesso, then it tends to suck all the oil in, and because all the oil's taken out, it goes dull. So you have to oil out before you proceed, which brings back the colors. But I still find that working on panel is, I think because it's not been absorbed into the surface, it just somehow it resonates in a particular way that I just love, that I don't find I really love so much when I use canvas.
Got it. We have a couple questions about the medium. So panel, is this a dye bond panel or this
think
particular one?
This one is an aluminum panel.
Okay.
That's actually, I think I gessoed myself.
Okay. Okay. And is it okay? So aluminum, so it's not titanium, but was it a white aluminum or was it like a silvery aluminum?
This one I think was a silvery aluminum.
Okay.
They come in different colors. You can get red, black, yellow, bronze, which I tried to get hold of, but I couldn't. I've got a golden one that I'm working on right now.
Wow. Cool.
And I think that question, Scylla, might also have been about what kind of white paint you use, Janet. Is it titanium white or what kind of white?
Generally titanium. Yeah. Yeah. I've tried lead, but I don't know. It just doesn't really work for me.
Okay.
Maybe I'll mature into it. The other good thing about titanium is if you make a mistake and you can just paint over it with white titanium, and it's like going back to the canvas again.
Yeah.
Got it.
Right, next one.
Yes.
This is done on 2 panels. There's actually a line down the center here.
Did you connect them or?
Yeah, they're connected. It's just that it was so big I couldn't possibly paint one model without the other half being there, or not being there rather, so I could see round the actual panel. So when I was doing this model here, I just had the panel, a singular panel on the easel, and then I can't remember exactly how I managed to connect the two, but then I think I put the other one up and just finished the leg.
I love that. I love that.
And it's kind of the theme of this particular one is East and West. My model was from Taiwan, and the other model is European. So it's like a pull between the 2 nations.
Love that. Was this shown at a gallery, this particular piece?
Yes, this was at Dacia, probably 5 years ago, maybe a bit more.
Okay.
Yeah. It's 60 by 60. It's one of the biggest ones I've done.
Okay.
How long does it take you to complete a painting like this, like from your first initial ideas or sketches until it's all done?
Well, it's always greater than a couple of months, I can tell you that. Elapsed time tends to be longer than processing time. So probably, I would say 9-10 months sometimes, because I'm not painting it all the time and you have to wait for it to dry at least 2 or 3 days.
Right.
And then so I try to work on many things so that I don't get bored, and it also gives the paint time to dry as well.
Got it.
I've incorporated stencils into this one as well, down here, and some in here. And there are 2 eyes back here, which was originally I was going to have a figure, so you see a little bit of a breast and a little bit of a waist up here. but it felt like it was trying to dominate the whole thing because it was in the middle. So I sort of obliterated it instead. This is a small drawing that I did of a model that we had in our class. It's partly a demo and partly for my own benefit to draw her, because it helps. If I draw her, it helps me with the teaching, sort of solidifies what we're looking at. So this is using micro pen, and I start off with yellow, and then I use orange, and then I use brown on top.
Do you do this every day, these sketches?
No, I just did this at the beginning of class, but now I'm trying to do more demos using paint.
Okay. Oh, so you're still teaching via Zoom, right?
Yeah, I have my own class now at the Art Students League.
Okay, cool. So now
Yeah.
everyone just heard that. There's that.
Self-promotion.
It's still going. Lauren just said art is beautifully photographed. Any tips on that? How do you photograph your artwork?
Get someone that does a really good job, because that's what I do.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's easy to photograph small paintings, like maybe up to 24 by 16, something like that. But once it gets bigger in the 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s, I just can't do it. I don't have the room to stand far enough back, and I don't have the lights, and I don't have the skill. So I just let somebody that does it really well do it. And it is an expense. Sometimes it's like $75 for one shot, but it's worth it because it's going to take me a lot more time and energy. And I've tried, I just can't get a good picture.
Got it. That's beautiful.
Having said that, I took this one, but it's small. And this is the same technique. I start with the yellow, go to orange, and then brown. And I found this is a really nice way of working, because if you make a mistake in yellow, it's easy to fix in orange, and then you can go over it with the brown. And I teach websites in it, I teach workshops in it now. This is something that I would never have done in the past, but my work recently has become a bit more personal. As somebody from England, we tend to bottle it all up, not express ourselves. I think that's part of the nationality trait. We do that until we die, basically.
The stiff upper lip.
Yeah.
I noticed that the title for this is Me Too. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Not in any great detail, but I'm sure that every woman, or most women, have had some kind of encounter with somebody that isn't invited.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say it has bothered me terribly, but I do feel that I'm sort of taking back that power now, hence the hands. And the stare is sort of, I think I wished I had been that person when the events had happened. But she's looking straight ahead, strongly.
Yeah, I think that definitely speaks to a lot of the ladies here, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A very powerful piece.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we have a comment, the skin tones are gorgeous with the thin overlays. Well, the previous artwork, but this one's the same too.
Thank you.
Yes, Janet, yeah.
We have a little bit of an echo.
Yeah, we do.
In a way.
We do have one more question with it. I'm sorry, which is the, can you talk a little bit about the gallery commission? How much do they charge, the gallery commission?
Oh, most galleries charge 50% at least.
Okay.
And some are actually charged more than like 40, 60, with 60 going to the gallery. But I've not encountered that.
Okay.
But I've certainly heard about it.
Okay.
This one is also, in addition to paint, it's got oil. It's got pen and ink. So I used a micro pen to do the stencils, to do the tattoos on her arm here and here. And then I used oil paint on top of that. So I think they're a pretty good medium to work in for fine detail. And I used a lot of it on her hands as well. There's a picture, I've forgotten the guy's name, but it's an old illustration I found when I was in London one time. And it's a woman based on a Shakespeare play where she's hiding in the forest and the light is catching the top of her hair. And I was so inspired by this image, I thought I'd do my own version. So I introduced a cat here, and I played with the hair, the lights on the hair up here. And the lines I've used are just masking tape, and I put paint over them and then strip some of them off and then put more paint over. So it's a variegated blue. This one I used a composition that I've seen in Renaissance paintings where there is one element on the left and then it's divided down the center, and then a third of the paint panel is taken up with this area here. I really like that. So I don't know whether I went into it thinking that exactly. I think I had a few goes and then I decided on this format. And the picture in the background out here is their towers from Oxford, which is where my mother-in-law used to live. And I've used stencils again, griffins. This is a close-up. I went to the British Museum when I was back in London, and you can go to their drawing section and they'll pull out a box full of Michelangelo drawings and you can look at them and handle them. And I was so in love with this experience that I copied some of his horses from a print that he made called Faden's Horses. And they're sort of cascading down through the painting and through his drawing. This I did as a study, and it was one of the first ones that I did after I left class. I was just so happy not to be in class anymore. So that's where the floating and the jumping came from.
I love it.
And this was the painting that the study was for. And this is based on a little painting that I saw when I was in Spain. It's at the Thyssen Boson Museum, I think it's called. And it's based on a painting by Beatrice Christus. And it was Our Lady of the Dead Tree, it's called. But there's this halo around the Madonna and the baby. It's not so much a halo, but a tree with lots of thorns. And I happened to have a stencil, and so I duplicated the effect around here. Yeah. And then the little thorns are actually holding, like you see here, letters, but the letters were all A's, which apparently are all prayers. And I was thinking, well, how am I going to do that? And one day I went down to the basement in my building and somebody had thrown out a handbag and it had all these little letters, actually quite large letters, probably like an inch or an inch and a half high. And it spelled out love. So I thought, well, I'll just take the love part and leave the bag.
I love that. We have another question from Janet Tava. Were you influenced by Fleming June, Frederick Leighton?
No.
Okay.
No.
That's fine.
This is one painting where I did actually use ink, and I used titanium as well. And there's actually a third person behind here because this was painted over another panel.
Oh, yeah.
So she's painted, I think, in titanium. I think this one, can't remember which one it was now. I think this is titanium and this is lead. The warmer one is the lead, and the cooler one is the paint, the titanium. I can't think which one it is. I think it might be the one on the right is lead.
And have you always worked with stencils in your art, Janet, or was that what kind of brought that about?
Laziness. I don't know, it's just something I like. I like repetitive patterns, and using a stencil enabled me to do that, and I was doing that for a while. And now I just think it's an easier way to add some interest without going into too much detail and having to paint all those tiny little details.
Definitely.
Smart.
So, yeah, bit of cheating really. I've tried to incorporate some of these like graphic patterns in here. I really like graffiti. I don't know anyone in particular because it's sort of an anonymous nature of it, but it's called wild style, where you have outlines and letters and objects, and they're all woven together in this sort of beautiful dynamic drawing or painting. So I was thinking about that when I did this little bit here.
It's really beautiful the way you merge it. So then all these different elements look completely seamless.
Oh, thank you. Actually, this is 2 models, but there's actually not 2 people. The torso of both of these were the same and the heads were the same, but I decided I needed a model to have a little bit more of a waistline. So I used the mermaid Phoenix model because she has more of a shape here. So she gained a waist.
Beautiful skirt.
Thank you.
That's another comment.
This is a friend of mine, Lear, and we were in a show together. It was her painting she, or she painting her.
Mm.
And we posed for each other. So she painted me, I painted her. And there's like little star cluster over here. I think she's a Virgo. So I put the star constellation in, and it's on 2 panels. And I was thinking about 2001, the Star Child type of thing, but she happens to have a paintbrush in her hand. This one I've worked on a couple of times, quite a few times actually. Oops, stop.
Oh. So I'm just gonna do a quick time check. We are at 7 o'clock in 2 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, but this is a beautiful presentation, and
again, it's the same model that I used for the mermaid and for the phoenix. And it took me a long time to get her face right because it's not an easy, comfortable position to hold. And I did use a photograph for it as well, but it's more of a combination of many photographs blended together. And I was going to use it in part of the painting in this particular position. But then I flipped it and decided to use a different model and use the position this way. And this originally was just going to be these 2 figures here and here, but then I felt it needed something in the foreground, and I was going through my black and white phase, so I decided to paint a friend of mine, Gabriella, who's also an amazing artist, Gabriella Handel. And so I put her down here on the right-hand side. This one, I think, is still perhaps a little bit in progress. I'm happy with the left-hand side of her, but I still feel I need to do more work on the right side of her. And the background was, again, a stencil, and I just turned the trees upside down. I like the idea of looking at a reflection rather than actually up at the trees. And then I have the trees right side up down here. If you're going to ask me what it means, I have no idea.
it's good.
But it's Life is Short, Art is Long. That's the title. And this is the last one. This one I called Falling Up. And it was at the end of 2019, I think. Yeah. I was hoping for better things in the future. So we'll see. This again is an aluminum panel. Okay.
Really beautiful.
These are gorgeous.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, Jenna, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Any last questions?
I'd like to comment on the gravity and the different you know, the degrees of gravity. They're floating, they're swimming, they're falling, they're bent over backwards. There's equilibrium, yeah, is missing, or trying to be maintained. It is. I don't want to be personal. I don't want to know. You feel like you're floating around all the time. I do. I'm always wondering what the hell I'm doing. But I'm really taken by the lightness and the soft touch.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know where the floating thing came from, because I never really explored it before. It's just, I think I was just so happy to not be taking classes after so many years.
I remember that time, and that was a long time ago. And I remember I was excited that no one could tell me what to do, and then I couldn't figure out what I was going to do.
Yeah, it's a kind of brave time, but it was, and also I'd given up the website design stuff, so it was a lot easier to concentrate on just from painting art rather than sort of tearing myself away from one thing and not really concentrating on the other thing. I don't know, I guess I don't want to do necessarily a predictable pose. I'd had so many poses in class with the person just sitting there with their arms crossed, and it just, I couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah.
I also, one of my favorite artists is Rubens, and I love his dynamic quality. And I think that kind of comes from sort of comic strips, comic books growing up as well, and had a friend who was really into comic books, and I sort of saw art didn't necessarily have to be peace and quiet. It could actually be movement and angles and violence as well. So I think that was a good thing to experience. But yeah, I guess I like people floating.
Yeah. Well, I was influenced by the Japanese woodcuts, and still, and the graphic quality, but also it's off balance. It's asymmetrical, but it's balanced. You know, it's by color or form or line. So
yeah, I love the asymmetry. It's a lot less, and it's more unexpected and therefore more beautiful, I think.
Absolutely, they're beautiful.
Thank you.
Janet.
Hello.
Hi, it's Janet Tava. What I love the paintings, but what I really love about them is you love to paint. And it's so obvious, and you get such an uplifting feeling when you look at them. You're not a tortured artist. That's really, it's so nice to see it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. One of your questions, Charity, was having your own vision if you don't follow the fine art route. I was thinking about that. I would say stick to it regardless, because what you do is unique to you and only you. And if you express yourself with technical know-how, that will help you express what you're trying to say more successfully. So I would say definitely get hold of the techniques, but stick with it, because your vision is totally unique to you. I mean, there is a caveat that your vision may not be embraced, but it's nonetheless, it's unique. So
that's wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, thank you so much, Janet. It's so good to have you here today.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed seeing everything, Janet. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This was a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see
All right.
everyone.
Hey,
Good night,
thanks,
all.
Janet. Great to see you.
Good
too.
night.
Bye.
Thank you very
Bye.
much.
Bye.
Very inspiring.
Thank you very much.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.